afternoon and welcome. My name is Alicia Scal and I am the co-CEO and head of events at Women of Influence, and I want to welcome you to the 5th installment of our Women of Influence virtual event series. It has been a difficult 3 months across many levels, and I want to share our sincere thanks for choosing to spend your time with us this afternoon. For those of you who have joined us for previous installments, you'll know that typically we would start our events with a land acknowledgement for the city we are gathering in. For those joining us for the first time today, and there are hundreds of you across the country, we would be remiss to not include this very important element. So please do take a moment to acknowledge that whatever land you are on is the traditional territory of many nations and is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I'd like to thank our presenting partners for producing this very important programming with us, BDC, the only bank devoted exclusively to entrepreneurs, and Cisco Design for Small Business is here to help female entrepreneurs survive and recover from secure remote work technology. We posted links to both the BDC and Cisco Design resources in the chat box and encourage you to see how they can help you. Now, just before I introduce our guests for today, a few housekeeping items that will allow for the best possible viewer experience. I am pleased to announce that we have integrated closed captioning for today's episode. You'll be able to access subtitles in French for those of you in the Quebec region. Please go to the Multimedia Viewer tab on the right side of your screen and press the Continue button. If you do not require closed captioning, we recommend switching your screen to the grid view. And the second half of the event will include a live audience Q&A, so please do feel free to submit your questions throughout the conversation, and our MC will get to as many of them as time permits. Finally, if you have any technical questions, please do type them into the chat function speech bubble on the right-hand side of your screen, and our tech support will be there to assist you. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our MC today, Alice Tran, along with our featured guests, Mandy and Rebecca Wolfe from Mandy Salads in Montreal. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. The introduction. So hi everyone, I'm Alice. It's such a pleasure for me to be here with you today. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. And I'd like to welcome you to the 5th installment of the What Now series. Alors bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Alice. C'est vraiment un plaisir pour moi d'être ici avec vous et d'animer cette discussion. Alors j'aimerais vous souhaiter la bienvenue à la 5e partie de la série qui s'intitule What Now. Donc en gros, qu'est-ce qu'on fait maintenant? Comment on fait pour réagir face à cette situation? Évidemment, la pandémie a bouleversé nos vies, ça a changé nos modes de vie, nos manières de faire, notre manière d'être également en tant qu'individu et collectivement. Alors aujourd'hui, nous allons pouvoir en parler avec nos invités. Alors ça me fait plaisir de vous présenter des femmes extraordinaires, des entrepreneurs. Elles ont cofondé Mandy Salads. Et d'ailleurs, on les appelle même les sœurs salades. So I am so thrilled and so excited to be able to discuss with one of the most amazing and successful entrepreneurs from Montreal. They co-founded Mandy's. We call them the Sister Salads. And yes, I am talking about Mandy and Rebecca Wolfe. So hi Mandy, hi Rebecca.
Hi. Hi. Thanks so
much. Donc, aujourd'hui, nous allons avoir aussi, donc la discussion va durer 1 heure. On a une période de questions à la fin, donc n'hésitez surtout pas à nous écrire à la fin. So before we start to talk about your business and about what now, Mandy and Rebecca, I really want to take this time to really thank you for everything you've been doing. I know you're taking care of your family, you've been still doing your business, but also you've been taking care of your community. You've been personally delivering food to healthcare workers, and I feel like that is such a generous and noble gesture, and it is essential, so thank you so much for that. And since you're taking care of everyone, I guess my first question, because we want to take care of you too, is how are you doing? How are you doing all this? How's your family and how's your team?
It's been a bit of a roller coaster, but I mean, all in all, we're very grateful we're healthy. Our business is still open. We've managed to stay open. Our kids are okay. We're still married, you know. It's been a challenging time for everybody on every level, but when you look at the things that are really important, we're very lucky.
And how about you, Rebecca?
Yeah, just extremely grateful. I mean, sometimes it's sad. This week we were looking at some of our dining rooms and seeing them empty in the month of June, and I've just tried to keep reminding myself that even though business looks so different right now, we're just so grateful that we were allowed to remain open during this time, and that we were able to bridge that gap to the other side, and we're all just looking forward to the other side. And yeah, we're just extremely grateful that we've been able to ride out this wave.
So before we talk about all that, I just want to go back 16 years ago. So in 2004, that's when Mandy started. And your brand is very popular in Quebec. If you live in Quebec region, for sure you've been to Mandy's many, many times. And I feel like there's a lot of our viewers are from across Canada and may not be as familiar. So can you tell us more about your story, please?
Sure. So we started this back in 2004. My boyfriend at the time had a clothing shop in Westmount, which is a little neighborhood in Montreal. And I had asked Mandy to come open up a little, almost like a lemonade counter in the back of his store. He had a closet where he kept all of his stock in back, and there was some square footage there. And I had come back from New York, where I loved eating create your own salads, and it was a trend that was going on there. And Mandy was incredible with food, and she still is, as we all know. And we were both post-university, didn't know what we wanted to do with our lives. And I convinced her that if we started making these salads in the back of my now husband's store, that people will come. So we set up shop there with a teeny tiny 3-foot counter and little residential fridge. And Mandy and I went to go get the food every day ourselves at different markets. And we started making salads, and one person told another person, and slowly through word of mouth, the business grew. And we opened up our first actual storefront a few years later that wasn't inside of Mimi and Coco, wasn't inside of the clothing store. And the outpouring of support and demand was overwhelming for us, and that's what allowed us to keep opening up further locations. We now have 8 locations in Montreal. And yeah, we have a whole line of dressings that are sold in grocery stores, as well as our salads are sold in grocery stores. We have a cookbook coming out this year, and
Ooh, that's very exciting.
yeah, there's many exciting projects on the horizon for us. So it's been a ride, but it's been incredible.
People like to call it the 10-year overnight success story.
Oh yeah, well, overnight, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just by the way, I've been so many times to Mandy's, and I just want to tell you that your salad, not only it's beautiful, but I feel like you always add that little, I don't know what it is, like the secret ingredient that it makes, like when you eat it, it's like a burst of happiness. Seriously, like every time I go there. And also like the design also, I think that's where you can really take the moment to be there. Either you're there alone but working, or chilling, or you're with your friends. I feel like you actually did create that space where we can be in the moment. And that's Rebecca, but the food, Mandy, so it's great teamwork. So heading into 2020, Mandy Salads was on track for exciting new growth. How many locations were you, well, you said it, yeah, you had 8 locations, but what were your expansion plans?
We were, and we still are planning on opening in Toronto as our first out of province venture. And we had opened up a pop-up shop on the South Shore, which was tremendously popular. And it was a very fixed lease that we had to end when the lease was up. It was for 6 months, but it was a great opportunity for us to see how loyal and amazing the South Shore guests are. And we have plans to open internationally as well. We think that we've definitely got a hold on the Montreal market, which is great. It's our hometown. The support here from Montrealers has been amazing, and we're so thankful to all the local salad eaters. But we wanted to think big and bring it out of province as well. So those plans are still there, and those
coming for you,
there.
Toronto.
Yes.
We just have to hit
and then in early March, when this very surreal event happened, the COVID hit reality, and we were not prepared for that at all. It just happened like overnight. What were your first thoughts and reactions faced to that? Because you had that all your plan, everything was planned, and then it happens. What were your first thoughts?
I think the scariest part was that everything happened so quickly. I remember having a meeting here on that first Friday afternoon and just saying, what in worst case scenario, like what if? And then the what if actually came true literally, I think that following Monday morning, where the entire city was shut down. And I think I speak for both of us when part of the most difficult challenge that we faced in those first 2 weeks was really making these huge moral decisions every day. And we watched the city close down, and we watched fellow restaurants close down, and we didn't know what the right thing was to do. And there was so many things weighing on our shoulders in terms of people's health, in terms of the viability of the business. It was just a very difficult time. We were on Zoom meetings all day with our team, oscillating between these huge mountains almost every day. So I think that was definitely very challenging at the beginning.
And then we got this, from our government and our public health officials, this Hail Mary that takeout and delivery was considered an essential service. And, one of the things that we've always done, and we were from the get-go, was a takeout and delivery model. So for us to, adapt, it wasn't so much adapting. It was just like, okay, well, sadly, we have to close our dining rooms, but there's still this viable path for us to stay alive and stay open and serve people in the safest way possible that was still being allowed and almost encouraged. I mean, our premier even thanked food workers in a lot of his daily press conferences because, it is essential to get food to people, and we're proud to serve healthy food. So that was a great, a great green light for us to keep going.
I think Mandy said to me in the first week when we were being challenged a lot whether or not we were an actual and essential service, and why were we putting our employees at risk and creating just greater risk to the community. And Mandy said to me, after with 4 kids cooking 3 meals a day for 7 days straight, she's like, I just want to order Uber Eats. And it was one night, and she said, and it's really true. I think for all of us that were home all the time, that was like that little light at the end of the tunnel, that you could actually order food that you weren't making and cleaning up yourself every single day. So I did it that way.
And that's for sure. I mean, before COVID, I think I took for granted, the takeouts or the prepared meals. And now that we're here preparing everything, sometimes I don't have time to do it. And sometimes I would have to skip a meal. So it is essential. And basically, I prefer to put my energy on where I'm supposed to. Comme je préfère faire des choses que j'ai envie. Donc, je fais des créations, j'ai des meetings après meetings. Et on est maintenant habitué à faire des rencontres à Zoom sans cesse. Donc, préparer des plats, ça a beaucoup d'énergie. Et même penser à qu'est-ce que je vais manger? Après une semaine, ça va. Mais quand ça fait 3 mois, est-ce que je mange la même chose tous les jours? What? No, seriously, I'm like, what do I do? What else can I eat? So it is important. And so I'd like to know did you need to go and find some financial support or any governmental relief to deal with all the challenges that you faced during COVID?
We feel very fortunate that we have established great relationships with BDC and with TD, which is another partner of ours. And we have an excellent CFO, and we were on the phone constantly, and the support was there. There were so many programs that the government put forth that were tremendously helpful for us, whether it was wage subsidy to rent reduction and rent help. We did have to close 2 of our locations for about 6 weeks at the beginning. It just was more costly to stay open than it was to close. And the relationships that we've built over the years really came in very very beneficial for us, and we appreciate all the help that was there for us. And so lucky to be Canadian, and so many things brought gratitude to us in every way.
Et qu'est-ce que vous avez fait avec votre équipe? Parce que you said you closed some locations. How did you deal with that? How did you not only manage all the stress, but I feel like it's also a very hard decision to call everyone and say, hey, right now I cannot have you on the team for now, and we don't know for how long. How did you deal with that, and how did you take the decision together?
It was actually a mix because we had a lot of people that just weren't comfortable coming to work. So we were at a certain point towards the beginning, we were actually in an awkward position because we were actually we were short of staff. There wasn't very many people that wanted to come to work. So our HR director is unbelievable, and she had sort of like town halls where employees could call. We had a window every day where they could call in and they could ask as many questions she wanted, and she was providing all of the information about government benefits and how people could not come to work or if they did want to come to work. So we were trying to offer as much resources and information as we could to our employees at all times. As government information was changing so quickly, we were staying on the ball and giving that to them. And we gave a reward to employees that did want to come in. We wanted to encourage the fact that we were appreciating how much it meant to us that people were coming in during this time, and the group of people that stayed and really did want to work were very happy to come to work, and we ensured the safest environments possible. We were extremely strict about government guidelines. We did everything very as per government wanted. So we felt comfortable with people coming in, and the people that wanted to be there really wanted to be there. We also prioritized making sure that the people that did want their jobs, that we were going to give them that. And it was so wonderful to see how even some of our head staff, like I just mentioned our HR director, but so many of our executive team came in and rolled up their sleeves and were doing dishes and working the cash registers. And it was unbelievable to see the way people stepped up during this hard time. And everybody really helped and chipped in.
And I guess also you already had like beautiful values together. That's why people wanted to also work together to go through that ensemble, right?
C'est ça, on a une de nos valeurs, c'est one team mentality. Puis je trouve que pendant la pandémie, on a vraiment vécu ça ensemble. Puis la solidarité de tout le monde qui travaillait ensemble était vraiment touchante et on était comblés de les valeurs qui étaient vraiment présentes dans nos équipes.
Donc maintenant, many guests of our What Now series, they did express a feeling of flying blind and struggling to find a point of reference to how to operate safely in a pandemic. And early on, you were able to identify an industry leader to help you navigate. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, his name is Chef Jose Andres, and he's from the Central World Community Kitchen. And he was a chef on the cruise ship.
Yeah, some of the first cruise ships that were infected, he was feeding them with his team, and 100% of his employees, none of them got sick. So he became an example for how to feed large groups of people that were infected without his team getting sick. So that was sort of a reflection of how strict the measures were that they were using and how safe they were being. And he became an example for us. And
we were able to tap into all these resources on how to create these safe spaces, these green spaces, how to navigate your your entryway so that there's a blockade for customers if somebody was picking up, like let's say an app order or a third-party delivery service was coming to pick up. The orders would be placed on a bench or on a table that was a certain distance away from other people. So it was a really useful tool to streamline safety measures and make sure that nobody was coming too closely in contact, that everybody was a safe distance away, and it was really helpful.
Yeah, and the team was unbelievable. They emailed us all of their material that we were able to reprint and put up in our own restaurants. They were available via phone for us to ask any questions, even for staff morale, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it was unbelievable resource for us. So yeah, always good, a positive example.
Was there any groups that you were part of, like similar to that, where it could be like on social media, or any groups that you would share insights like that to other people who are working in the food industry?
Not necessarily like form groups. There were a lot of different charity relief through the restaurant community. Like so many restaurant workers were laid off. There was a foundation that was created called the Montreal Restaurant Worker Relief Program. And there was also other Good Food who were contacts of ours. They said that they were employing people if we had to lay anybody off to direct them. So there was so much help and there was so much sharing of resources and possible employment that it felt like a really touching experience to see everybody coming in. Like, how can we help? Where can we donate? Does anybody need jobs? It was really something.
Et j'imagine qu'il y avait aussi des citoyens. J'imagine qu'il n'y avait pas nécessairement juste des gens qui travaillaient dans le milieu de la restauration qui sont venus vous voir. J'imagine qu'il y avait aussi des citoyens qui venaient pour vouloir vous aider.
Absolument. Oui, parce qu'il y avait beaucoup comme mouvement de supporter local, acheter local. C'était comme de mettre produits locaux de tous nos vinaigrettes, de tout ce qu'on vendait. C'était très important pour notre économie ici. Et pour nos employés de supporter une entreprise québécoise, canadienne. Et on a pensé que c'était très généreux puis important pour le gouvernement de demander à les citoyens de supporter local au lieu d'acheter sur Amazon ou quoi que ce soit.
Yeah. And how about the distribution? Did something change in the way you were working with your distributors?
I think at the beginning it was a very scary time for everybody, and we didn't know from one day to the next, who was going to close, who was going to be able to stay open. And we have wonderful relationships with our suppliers, and everybody was kept in very close communication about the state of the company and the state of their inventory, and what we were able to get and what we weren't able to get. And we actually used it, and we pivoted the whole relationship so that we could help each other, wherein a lot of the suppliers, retailers that they would normally do business with had closed, and we were open. So we said, let's look at this as beneficial, and let's start bringing in products that you have that you don't want to go bad, for example, or that people need, and we're open, and we could be a channel for some of those products. So I'll just foray into our whole grocery initiative, but that's sort of how it happened. We said, we're going to start offering these things, and we wanted people to come to us not just for salads, but grocery items as well. And that's, I don't know if we want to get into that right now, but that's sort of how that all began.
Well, yes, sure, please. So it's not, so now it changed a bit, right? So it's not only salads. You now offer some packages, some meal kits. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, definitely. So right at the beginning, going to the grocery store was just completely unpleasant. I mean, it's still not entirely pleasurable, but it's getting better. But at the beginning, especially to get your groceries delivered, for anybody that was really feeling the fear, that was immunocompromised, that didn't want to go out or couldn't go out, to get food delivered to them was almost, impossible, if not like a 10 to 12-day wait for some grocery stores at the end of March and early April. So as entrepreneurs, we often like to put ourselves in the position of a consumer or a guest and a customer and be like, well, what do I want? What's important for us and our families right now? What's a service that we could use, and how can we offer that to other people? And so that's what we did. We said, we're tired of going to the grocery store to come up with meals for the next 7 days, because people are going out grocery shopping once a week. We have a lot of kids at home. So we're like, let's get these grocery boxes and meal kits together. And that's what we did. We did a do-it-yourself taco box. We did a smoothie morning box, a fruit and veg box, a munchies box, and a kids box like yogurt and cheese, and like even drawing papers and crayons. And we just tried to be as innovative as we could be, while all at the same time thinking about what we would actually order ourselves if these products were available. And we did it ourselves, and our husbands were the delivery drivers, and we did it within a 48-hour window of delivery to all over the island of Montreal. And it was fun.
So do you have like any tips on how to maximize profit margins for personal delivery staff versus apps like let's say Uber Eats, for example?
Well, obviously, it's when you're dealing with a third party, you're having to give up a certain percentage of the sale. So it's generally better. I mean, that's why we decided to do the delivery ourselves, for example, for the groceries, and just trying to encourage direct business with your guest, as direct as you can be. And we love our delivery partners. They're unbelievable, but obviously there's an impact on the bottom line. So we tried to encourage our app as another safe measure for people. We were very fortunate and grateful that we had developed an app for contactless pickup before COVID hit. So that was a huge asset for us, that people felt really safe ordering with us and coming in to pick up and not having to interact with anybody.
So how did you manage your time? Because if you're cooking, if you're trying to build a different kind of business model, plus you're delivering, plus you have to take care of your family, how did you do it? Or how are you still doing it?
Somewhere in the middle, I came to the realization that the days feel so long, but the weeks are flying by. So, sometimes we just take it hour by hour, and we tag team a lot with our husbands. Like, we have to get on this Google Meet or this Zoom call. This kid has, this Zoom meeting with their teacher. We're going to all have lunch together at this time, dinners at this time. Like, it's very, you have to be very mindful and organized and plan and map the day. And often some days, like, we just didn't or couldn't get it all done. And that's okay. You have to be gentle with yourself. These are very unusual times. There's a lot of new demands and challenges. And, sometimes the kids would be watching cartoons longer than we'd like. And, at the end of the day, they're loved and they're healthy and they're fed. And, we're all trying and doing our best. And it's great to have the support and have another mother entrepreneur on the same team, and we understand the struggles of so many parents and working parents out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think also just knowing that the kids were so happy and that they didn't even want to be in school and they were so grateful to be home with us all the time was
Are they still
sort of
happy?
comfort. They are still happy. And I think also knowing that the entire world had slowed down and everybody was in the same boat and nobody, the rat race was over. I think at one point midway, I said to Mandy that I feel just this sense of calmness and a sense of happiness and peace that I haven't felt in a long time. And I think it's really because the rat race had just stopped for a minute. I mean, we're so go, go, go. And part of the nature of our business as entrepreneurs is always onto the next idea and onto like progress and development. And things were changing so quickly for us, especially in the last 5 years. So I think the fact that the world almost made everybody stop was a blessing, because you're not feeling like the next person is at it faster than you are, or that you're missing out on some sort of development. It's like everyone was just forced to stop.
Everybody's in a timeout.
Yeah, and in a timeout, and the timeout felt really good. I know personally, spiritually, I think it was a really, it was a beautiful experience from that perspective.
Et je suis vraiment d'accord avec vous parce que je pense qu'on a tous pris le temps aussi pour nous. Et puis, c'est comme vous l'avez dit, c'est toujours go, 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 go. On a toujours plein de plans. Et en tant qu'entrepreneur, en plus, il faut toujours être on, toujours trouver des solutions parce que tout revire, ça change à chaque minute, j'imagine. Et de pouvoir prendre ce temps-là, d'être avec sa famille, avec nos amis, je pense que c'est un luxe qu'on se donne. Il y a des situations qui sont difficiles, mais j'imagine que vous avez pu vraiment focuser sur l'essentiel. Et c'est ça qui est important. Et puis donc, pour revenir à ça, j'aimerais que vous me parliez peut-être du modèle du départ et qui a parti Mandy's. Parce que finalement, vous êtes revenu finalement à la base et l'essentiel de ce que vous voulez être, Mandy's. C'est ça?
Exactement. Au début, en 2004, c'était juste du take-out parce qu'on n'avait pas vraiment un endroit pour faire de la vaisselle, pour avoir des bols, puis des fourchettes, cuillères.
Un espace pour les gens pour s'asseoir. C'était très, très, très petit.
Ouais. Puis on ne savait pas dans le moment, mais les contenants qu'on a utilisés, les contenants clairs, ça fait partie de notre branding. Puis on n'a même pas su dans ce temps-là parce que c'est un contenant clair, puis c'est plein de légumes, des fruits de couleur, tout ce qui est comme ça donne l'eau à la bouche quand vous voyez. Donc, il y avait le monde qui se promenait dans la rue avec leurs contenants, plein de salades. Puis, c'était une mode d'avertissement de free marketing. Et puis, pour nous, c'était pas trop de pivot pour notre business parce que c'était toujours comme ça. Je pense que même avec les salles à manger, on a toujours fait comme 60% take-out. Donc, c'était facile pour nous de juste faire le focus sur ce modèle-là. Ça nous fait triste de ne pas avoir le monde dans nos salles à manger, mais il fallait le faire.
It's also definitely given us a new perspective in terms of how we want to grow the business and what kind of business model we want to focus on, where we're not going to be investing in these large dining rooms anymore. And obviously, the experience is of utmost importance to us, but we don't think that it needs to happen anymore in these big dining rooms with huge amounts of seating. And that became crystal clear to us throughout this process, that our sales sort of have, escalated now with summer months as well, and we don't have the dining room. So looking a lot at the way that we plan our labor, the way that we operate has been very enlightening.
Mm-hmm. And a lot also of our entrepreneurs have told us that they had to quickly digitize their services, implement e-commerce solutions overnight. What did you do? How did you do it? Were you already set up, or did you have to do it quickly?
We were already set up, which was a beautiful thing. So we had our website up and running, and we just were able to add onto it all of the delivery services. So that's something that we did very, very quickly. We have an unbelievable team that basically made it happen overnight. So we did our entire ordering platform through our website. Our app, as we mentioned, was already in full-blown functionality, so we didn't really have to work on that, and that was wonderful for COVID. And we worked with our third-party delivery partners, which were incredible. We also teamed up with DoorDash throughout the process, so they were a new partner that came out of COVID. Uber Eats has been unbelievable as well, and a la carte express. So we were sort of set up in that way. We're very grateful. We saw a lot of restaurants that were scrambling to, partner with third-party delivery companies when this all hit. So we were very grateful that a lot of that was really already in place for us before COVID.
Do you have any tips for other entrepreneurs concerning, like apps or e-commerce online? Do you have any tips?
I mean, it might seem like a financial big investment, but it really does pay off the return on investment. Like it's just the way of the future. People are ordering for takeout more often. People want their food when they want it, where they want it. It's not necessarily going to be in your establishment. And to take a look at that and see how you can either, I mean, the best case scenario is do it yourself, but that's very costly. One of the business models that we are in awe of and think is just genius is Sweetgreen in the United States. They have their own delivery. But that's like huge eons and financial steps away for most. But yeah, if you can get on a third-party delivery platform, for sure, I think people are going to be not necessarily going into dining rooms right away. So it's definitely stay open and build that bridge to the other side.
And if you can create even a simple app for people to come in and pick up without having to interact and use a card or use cash for that matter, it's a really nice. It's a nice way for people to feel comfortable ordering these days.
So we just talked before about the fact that you were doing delivery not only for healthcare workers, but you also had an impact on la société, so la communauté. Can you tell us more about how did you mobilize your resources and find a direct path to serve those most in need?
Yeah, social media has been a great tool for us to communicate directly with so many people. And I think it was one of the original stories and posts that we did saying that we wanted to help. And, where are you working at? There were so many nurses and doctors that were expressing that they were exhausted, that they were working doubles, they're on the front lines. And we started getting messages. I work at this hospital. I work at this hospital. And can you deliver here? And we're in the birthing ward, or we're in the, the COVID unit. And, it's always been our first reaction. And it's one of the values that we were raised with is to help out where you can. And, we have food. People wanted the food. It just was a no-brainer for us. And it was such a pleasure to, to bring a little treat to people who were doing the most work and all the heavy lifting. So between the hospitals, we were doing 3 times a week, and we delivered to some CHSLDs, which are in Quebec long-term care facilities, like seniors residences, which were the
And how was that? Because I know, from the news, there was a lot of problem with the CHSLD. How did you deal with that? Because I know for a while you couldn't get in, and then, how did you do it?
Well, we found out that the CHSLDs were being hit the hardest, and I think it was actually through some of the doctors at the Jewish General where they had their largest hit pandemic ward in the Montreal hospitals, and they were the ones that said, there's so many people that are suffering in these CHSLDs, and you guys should also be bringing lunch there. And we wanted to figure out a way to do it in a safe way, obviously. And whenever we do the drop-offs, there would always be somebody that would come out of the building, or we could leave it on the sidewalk, or there was a representative from inside that would come out to get the boxes. So we made sure that we obviously social distanced, and we,
wore masks and gloves and did everything that was suggested.
And it always felt just really good and safe, and like we were doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm. So now we're talking about the reopening phase, the second phase. Can you tell us more about your current situation in your region, and how are you preparing for that?
Sorry, I wanted to add one last thing to the previous question about helping the community. We are also a part of the Welcome Collective, which is an organization in Montreal that helps settle refugee claimants and asylum seekers that are in Canada. And what we learned through, we're on the board we're board members. And what we found out is that during this pandemic, a lot of the refugee claimants weren't able to get to the food banks, which were so graciously offering food boxes and whatnot. But some of these people were single mothers or pregnant women with like a 2 and a 3-year-old, and they just couldn't get to the food banks. So we were also putting together food boxes on a weekly basis to bring to the families that were most in need and that couldn't get to the food bank. So that was another heartwarming experience.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Our suppliers were sending us, items that we don't necessarily carry in the restaurants, like rice and beans, etc. And we were able to make up kits for those families and bring them. So that was.
So I guess if there's anyone else who would like to help they can reach you, right? I guess on your website, or they can send you an email if they'd like to join to your movement. Is that possible?
Yes.
100%. And another beautiful part of the healthcare workers initiative was that people started seeing that we were doing it and people wanted to help and they didn't know how to help. So they were, on top of the donations that we were giving from Mandy's, from ourselves, we were also bringing lunches on behalf of people that would pay for the lunches. They would give, they would place an order and they would ask us to go deliver it to healthcare workers. So we were another channel for people that wanted to do good, and it was helping obviously our business at the same time during COVID. So it was a wonderful sort of dance of all
Paying it forward.
Paying it forward.
That is so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. That's amazing. So what is next for Mandy's? What are the different opportunities for you, and how do you see the new model?
Well, in Quebec, it's been mandated to start the gradual reopening of restaurants the week of June 22nd. So in 2 weeks from now, people will be able to dine in establishment with the health and government standards. So for us, just very near future, we're looking at the next week of planning our safety rollout and how we're going to be able to do that, because every location is a different size. How do you separate the tables? What are the best practices? Do we continue to serve in our compostable containers and forks made out of potatoes that can all be composted, or do we go back to China and silver? There's all these, little details that need to be sorted out. But, once life gets back to more normal, we want to get back on track with our larger growth plan and still carry out our dreams. So it just might take a little bit longer than what we'd hoped for.
Very exciting that we also launched our salad dressings for the first time in metros across Quebec. So they're in 180 metros as of this month, which is crazy. And this all happened during COVID. So we're just so grateful for it also. And we were nervous about doing the launch. And then we just, the feedback from Metro was that, their sales are unbelievable and people are going to grocery stores more than ever. So we thought that, it was a good time, and we bit the bullet and we did it. And I think the response has been wonderful. So we're also very happy about expanding our options into grocery stores from Mandy's too. So you will see Mandy salad dressings in a metro near you, and
a cookbook, which was
Cookbook, yes,
May 19th. We just didn't feel like it was the right time to be putting out a cookbook or promoting sales when so many people were suffering. And we got so much feedback, and people that had pre-ordered the book that were stuck at home, that, I'm sure you've been seeing on social media, everyone's baking bread and making sourdough and gardening and all these do-it-yourself things.
Yes.
Hey, I ordered my book. Where's my book? I want to make your stuff at home. So we listened to the people and we decided, okay, there might not ever be a perfect time to launch the book. So we pushed it, and it's being released July 7th in English, and at the beginning of August, the French edition is coming out. So it'll be available anywhere you get your cookbooks. You can find it or pre-order it. So we're very excited.
Great.
3 years in the making.
3 years of the making? Wow.
Yes.
Where did the idea start?
We thought we could do it ourselves. We're like, how hard can it be to make a cookbook? It's pretty hard. So we had a village of amazing team members and contributors and graphic artists and photographers and a co-author and a great publishing house, and it was a lot of fun. We're both pregnant at different times in the cookbook and photos. It's funny.
I have a question for you. So I know when the COVID reality hit everyone, so there was some people who did continue working and some others that lost their job. And then I want to know, how did you deal with that the fact that, and it's amazing that you're still continuing and it's great. And how did you feel with the fact that there were also others who needed help but who couldn't keep, their job? How did you feel, and how did you react face to that?
You're saying our own employees or just friends that lost jobs?
Yeah, like friends and other people. I want to give maybe tips to other people who feel like, oh, I'm still working and I don't think people should feel bad about it. And I feel like, how do you, because you're still doing your things and it's still, you're still successful. And how do you, comment vous réagissez face à cette situation?
We've always been people with very empathetic natures, and I think it's something that we're always cognizant of and sensitive to. And I think that I think being in Canada, there are so many programs, and I feel very safe and well taken care of here. I mean, we went to worst case scenario in the first month. I mean, like, yes, we built a successful company, but the last 3 months have not been, it hasn't been easy. And yes, we've managed to stay alive, but, you know, we also took a really big hit. And we see that, you know, like Rebecca mentioned earlier, so many, like the whole world is going into a sort of economic downspin, possible recession for a while. And we understand that. And we've even managed to employ some extra friends and family that needed work, and some refugee claimants we've offered work to. So wherever we can, we're trying to help out. And, you know, we're not going to be promoting any $25 salads anytime soon. We're going to keep our offerings, you know, within a reasonable amount, and just, you know, as always, as we've always done, think of others and see how we can help them.
Donc, vous avez beaucoup parlé de résilience, toujours se retourner sur notre dizaine, trouver des solutions innovatives pour que ça continue. Est-ce que vous avez des conseils à donner à d'autres entrepreneurs pour trouver cette énergie, cette motivation quand on se lève le matin? Comment vous faites pour continuer à rester positive, à rester motivé? Do you have any tips for other entrepreneurs?
I think taking care of your physical well-being contributes a lot to the wellness that goes on inside your head. So just making sure that you're eating right and you're sleeping properly and you're getting exercise if you can get exercise, and all of the basics that we all know. I think that's the first part of making sure that your thoughts feel good every day. And I think, as we talked about the slowdown and the peacefulness of all of this, is using that to some sort of advantage. I think especially as entrepreneurs and as creatives, it's really allowed for a new space for new ideas to open up, and to look at ways that you can pivot your business and look at ways that you can actually come out of this maybe in a new way or in a different model, and thinking outside the box in terms of creativity to make money. And I think that there's going to be incredible ideas that come out of this from, you know, millions of entrepreneurs after COVID on the way that we do things and how we do things. And I think that it's an opportunity more than anything else. So,
and I also think keeping the lines of communication open are very important. We're so grateful that we have each other to talk to. Il y avait des jours où, honnêtement, j'étais déprimée. The day ahead of me just looked so heavy and daunting, and my spirit was down. And I would tell her, look, I'm having a hard day. And, you know, you have somebody, whether it's your business partner or your partner or friends or colleagues, whoever it is that you trust, that can, you know, be your sounding board and just remind you that this too will pass, whatever it is. And, you know, just to keep talking, you know, don't get too in your head about it. You're not the only one suffering through this. And together, and brainstorming, and, you know, sleeping on ideas and waking up and having fresh conversations, I think is also key to stay alert and to get that resiliency back.
So what would be, like, if you had to choose only one thing to tell us, like, c'était quoi la plus grande réalisation que vous avez fait durant cette période? What did you, what's the biggest lesson, I guess, from all of this? Like, if you had to say one thing, what would it be?
It's simple.
I was just going to say less fluff. You know,
Less fluff.
Just for us, there's so many bells and whistles in our business that we realize are just not essential to the bottom line anymore. This is from a very business standpoint, but it's.
Can you give some examples?
I think a lot of it pertained to the dining rooms, just even the way that we would. I mean, it sounds crazy, but everything from the decor to the amount of, just even for the spring season, the amount of money that we would invest in fresh flowers for the dining rooms and our terraces that we don't. Like, the savings are unbelievable. It's just like, you know, fluffing up the restaurant experience as a huge part of our brand. And we know that, and we're definitely going to pay attention to that. But there's just like a lot of extras that I think at the end of the day, you just don't need.
And our kids have shown that too. They don't need very much. Like, giving my baby some fit in itself Tupperware to play with for like you know, an hour. She was pretty happy with the Tupperware. Like, you really don't need that much. We think
it is so true. What have you discovered to be the most important and effective attributes of a leader in a time of crisis?
I think transparency is something that's very important. We didn't have the answers, and we didn't, we also didn't want to come across as panic-stricken, like clueless, directionless leaders. But to show your humanity and your humility, and maybe you don't know what to do in that moment, and to
explain how and why you're making decisions.
To let your team in on that.
All right. So we have, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, it was like kind of glitching. I was like, oh,
1
we
second.
froze. Well, it's part of the reality, right? This is how we work now. We have to adapt. So we have some time for some questions from our audience. So I'm just going to see, there's a question right here. Is there any value anymore in building an annual or 3-year strategic plan? How far ahead are you planning?
I think it's good to have a roadmap of where you want to go, and then you can start taking the steps there. I mean, I think the last 3 months have shown us that like anything can get derailed, but I still think it's important to know where your end goal is, so that you can start taking those steps and actionable goals to get there.
I think that having that roadmap and that strategic plan is very important, because it's very easy, I find, especially as an entrepreneur, to get derailed. And, there's so many ideas or concepts or directions or something that you want to take that will often, take you off track of what the real plan is. And I think the plan is what's going to get you there. So you have to stick to some sort of plan, or there is no plan. So, yeah.
So I guess it's like you have a plan, but then after you have to also let go and go with the flow
Sure,
of it
you have to
too,
be flexible and
adapt.
adaptable. And we look at this as, in terms of our trajectory and our strategic plan, we look at it as about a year pause that we've taken. So in order for us to completely turn it around and to get on track with the plans that we had, I mean, that's sort of the longest worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so another question right here. Homeschooling is challenging under the best of circumstances. How are you managing it while also under the immense pressure of not just running and running, but ensuring the survival of your business? How do you create space and show up as your best self?
Best self homeschooling. I think that our kids aren't at an age where like they're let's say covering topics that I can't explain myself. So I feel very lucky for that. Like I can cover grade 2 math, no problem. So I think that just putting my phone in another room for that hour or whatever it is, and just making a promise to myself to stay present really helped, and it really showed my kids that I was there for them. And then also explaining that, mommy has to get back to work. It's just, it's complicated to explain to them when you're home all the time, but you're working. They're like, why are you always on your phone? And, there was a lot of trying to explain what was happening to kids, and their brains aren't, fully there yet. So it's definitely a challenge.
I found that having a routine was helpful. It didn't always happen, but just that I knew that there was some sort of roadmap for us every day as a family, and what that looked like for the kids also. Was just even that, that they, like each part of the day was broken down, and we put our little schedule on the fridge, and it was always a reference point for all of us. So I found that helpful also.
I love that.
In our household, our rule is do what you have to do. And when you've done what you have to do, then you can do what you want to do. So that's always been the...
I like that. And has it worked?
Yep, it has. Yeah.
That's great. Okay, so another question. As a business owner, how has your perception of success changed during COVID-19? Comment la perception comment la définition du mot succès a changé durant cette période pour vous?
I think that we've all watched a lot of these huge, larger than life companies so heartbreakingly go bankrupt during this time. And I think that our perception of the bigger the better, as for me personally, changed dramatically. And I'm looking at, I think what success is going to look like after COVID is not how much money you're making, but really about how you've adapted and how you've changed in the face of adversity and how you've been creative in order to navigate this huge change in our world. And I think the companies that are going to be able to change and be open to change and be flexible to change are the ones that are going to come out the most successful. And it's not just about how big you are, it's about how you're going to take this opportunity to get creative and make a difference in the world.
C'est vrai. Ils disent toujours comment on fait face à une situation. C'est pas nécessairement le résultat, mais c'est comment on va faire pour passer à travers cette étape et surtout ensemble, je pense. C'est ça qui est important. Et vous le faites tellement bien, non seulement ensemble, mais on le voit bien aussi. Vous avez réussi à trouver des liens et à créer une communauté qui s'entraide. Et c'est ça qui est important durant des périodes comme celle-ci. Et j'espère qu'on va s'en rappeler tout le temps que c'est pass it forward. You said it. It's like helping and then someone else will help and helping and helping. And I feel like that is the essential. Alors, une autre question pour vous. What is the single most successful change coming out of COVID that will continue to use post-COVID? For example, a new business practice, social engagement, new offerings, for example.
We've liked not using cash. And it's interesting because not only has it not been, I don't know if that's something we're going to continue to do, and that's a much larger discussion, but that was enlightening for us that we went cashless during this process, and the tips are higher for our employees. We've gotten a lot of feedback that they're so happy about that, and it's just made our operations in terms of back end administrative seamlessness a lot better. So I mean, who knows what the future holds, but that's come out of this that we're looking at as a possibility.
And also scaling things back, not being so, to use the word extra, as we'd spoken about a little bit before, but just really looking at what is essential and what's not, and whether it's the amount of staff you have on the floor or the amount of food that you're ordering, just to not be floating in the excess and the gravy so much, and just to keep it really simple, I think is something that we use moving forward.
All right. How did your communications tactics help you change your messaging to retain and attract new customers? Did you use social media or paid marketing?
Social media all the way. Becca's the Instagram queen.
Well, so much. Yeah, it's just such an incredible tool today for companies that it's just free at the touch of a button. It's completely free, and it's people that have sort of signed up to be there with you. It's people that want to be there, that want to know what's going on, that care about the information that you're giving to them, and that you haven't targeted them in some other way. Like, we rarely pay for paid advertising even through Instagram, and it's just
and it's a two-way venue. I mean, they can ask us questions through our DMs, they can post comments that they're asking questions, so it's a great way to actually engage with them versus just putting information out too. So we found that to be helpful.
And so what's your oh, sorry, you were saying?
No, even just people were so grateful and talking about that we were showing people the safety measures that we were using right away at the beginning, and we could literally take a phone and walk people through the actual customer journey as they would walk into one of our locations. I think it's such a simple thing, but I think that type of communication went very far for us, that people really understood the operations as we were adapting to COVID.
Made them less fearful to come in, and we put out announcements from CDC that food is not a transmissible way for COVID. So if you're ordering takeout or delivery, the virus cannot be transmitted through food or containers. So and just spreading correct information and scientific information that would help people to understand all the measures that we were taking so that they would be the safest.
Est-ce que vous avez des conseils pour ceux et celles qui aimeraient utiliser les réseaux sociaux comme vous, mais qui connaissent pas trop encore comment bien l'utiliser, ou c'est plutôt aussi, est-ce que j'ai besoin d'avoir une grosse caméra? Est-ce que j'ai besoin d'avoir un tripod? Do I need lights? Do I need this and that? And what do I say? Do I have to, how would you resume that so that it's easy, so we can do it and it's efficient?
You just have to start. My advice would be just do it. And I think if anything, if you're starting to worry about, selfie lighting and tripods and all of that stuff, you're basically setting you're setting yourself up for, you know, a bigger challenge. It's like you just have to start and get the momentum going. When you think too much about something, it's not going to happen. I know sometimes it's daunting in a day and or think, you know, we have to start storying, but it's like I know the minute that I do one story, it opens up the floodgates and it's like, wow, we're just going to story all day here because it's just, you just got to go and you got to just do it.
Right.
Don't think too much about
And
it.
stay active. You can't disappear for 5 days and then come back on. Like you're going to lose that momentum. So
That's a good tip. It's true. Like it has to be, il faut que ce soit non seulement cohérent, mais il y a une consistance, right? There's a consistency and people actually like I feel.
right.
Parfait. Alors, on a une autre question ici. As successful business owner and moms, how do you make time for yourself? That's a good question.
Funny. Last week I was having like just a like verging on burnout feeling, and I was telling Becca that let's book like a spa, just the two of us. It's like even if it's for an overnight, just get away. Let's sleep, and wake up when we want to wake up. I think it's planning, and that's a very like excessive self-care journey. But if you can just carve away like even an hour to go for a walk if you don't feel like doing vigorous exercise, just do something that will make you feel better in a healthy way, of course. And if you live with your kids or your partner, just to ask them, like, look, I'm having a really tough time, like tomorrow morning, like I'm going to sleep in and you're going to wake up with the kids, like just get that equity going, get that fairness going, make sure that you're getting enough sleep, and that even if you do like a backyard girls' night out, whatever it is that feeds your soul and that makes you feel better, make sure that you're scheduling time for it, because you are important. Don't think that kids are the most important.
It starts with you.
Yes, yes, you matter.
So one last question. Yes, we have time. Let's do this. If we had to remember one thing of this conversation, what would it be? Donc, s'il y avait une chose, on a parlé de beaucoup de choses avec vous. J'aimerais savoir si on devait nous rappeler d'une chose, la chose la plus importante, je dirais, de cette conversation. Ça peut être une leçon que vous avez apprise, ça peut être un conseil que vous voulez donner, une réalisation que vous avez faite durant la période qu'on vit en ce moment. Ça serait quoi?
That's tough.
It is tough. One.
With the right support, you can get through anything. I think that's like my tagline, but I have her by my side. I have a healthy family. We have our amazing team of staff. Like it just with the right support, like no matter what comes your way, if you've got your core people around you, even if you've got nothing, you've got your people, you can make it through anything. And we're seeing that day by day. We're slowly seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
I agree.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mandy, Rebecca. It was such a pleasure. I feel like we can talk like all day. I have like tons of questions. But thank you so much. And thank you all for being here with us. And for sure, we would not be able to be here without, the help of our sponsors, BDC, the only bank devoted exclusively to entrepreneurs, and Cisco Design, helping small business and female entrepreneurs survive and recover through secure remote work technology. So I'd like to invite you to go find more about them on their website, on their social media. And again, thank you so much for being with us. You can also find some information about the What Now series on the website. You can find out some critical resources, and we will continue our programming into the next phase of the rebuild. So be well. I'm sending you lots of love and light. Merci beaucoup d'avoir joint cette conversation avec nous. Merci Mandy, merci Rebecca. Ça a été vraiment un plaisir et je me sens vraiment honorée et je suis vraiment reconnaissante de pouvoir partager ce moment-là avec vous. Évidemment, merci à nos partenaires, merci à Women of Influence. Encore une fois, si vous avez des questions, n'hésitez surtout pas à envoyer un message à Mandy, Rebecca, surtout si vous voulez aider. Peu importe la manière que vous pouvez le faire, je suis sûre que Mandy et Rebecca vont pouvoir vous aider et répondre à vos questions. Et je vous envoie beaucoup, beaucoup d'amour et beaucoup d'énergie positive. Et j'espère qu'on va recevoir bientôt. À bientôt.
Merci.
Au revoir. Bonne journée.